so much. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. We're going to hear further evidence from firefighters in the course of today. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please may we call our next witness, who is firefighter Thomas Abell.
Okay. Good morning. Yes, would you like to swear the witness? Okay.
Repeat after me. I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Abell.
Good morning.
Are you happy standing, or will you prefer to sit?
I'm happy standing, yeah.
Very good, thank you. If at any time you want to sit, please just say and you can sit.
Okay.
Could you please give the inquiry your full name?
My name is Thomas Charles Abell.
Thank you very much. And you have a statement which has been given to the police and provided to the inquiry, which you should have in a small bundle in front of you.
Yep.
At tab 5A. And the relativity reference to that is MET quadruple 080558. And attached to it are, I think, two documents: your contemporaneous notes, handwritten, which is MET quadruple 05699, and your statement, MET quadruple 05700. So far as your statement is concerned, Mr. Abell, it's dated the 13th of December 2017. Have you read it recently?
Yes.
And are its contents true? Can you confirm?
Yes.
Thank you. Have you discussed your statement or the evidence that you're going to give today to the inquiry with anybody before coming here today?
No.
Can you just give me a thumbnail sketch of your career at the London Fire Brigade, starting with when you joined?
I joined London Fire Brigade in September 2011. I started my basic training for 4 months at Southwark Training Centre. After that, I was posted to North Kensington Fire Station on the Red Watch. That will be in early February 2012, and I've been there ever since.
And at June 2017, what was your rank?
Firefighter.
Firefighter. Now, you've set out details in your statement of your training, but I'd like to ask you just one or two questions about the following that may be particularly relevant to our work. You say that you're considered competent in the first line of the second paragraph of page 1. Could you explain what competent means?
Competent means after finishing training school, you're on development. You have a development folder that you need to complete. You complete various aspects of the job role. After a certain amount of time and proving that you're competent in different areas, you get signed off as a competent firefighter, and you get to take these things called diamonds off your helmet so people can see that you are a competent firefighter. I think that was in about 2013 I became competent.
Right. And when, as soon as possible, before June 2017, were you graded competent? Or was it just when you left training?
It's when I was, it was 2013 when I finished my development folder, as it's called. You're then competent, and you become just a competent firefighter.
Okay. Were you reassessed at any time between then and 2017?
It was an ongoing assessment from finishing training school to that time.
Right. High-rise fires is a subject I just want to investigate with you a little bit. Were you, as at June 2017, aware of any fires such as Shepherd's Court or Lacknell House?
I was aware of Lacknell House through a case study I looked at in 2014 for the brigade, in Christmas 2014, and I was at the Shepherd's Court fire.
You were at Shepherd's Court?
Yep.
And what did you learn from your case study about Lacknell House that you've just told us about in 2014?
The case study was a long time ago. I can't remember the real ins and outs of what we learned, but it was obviously, at that point, one of the most unusual and worst fires that the brigade had dealt with.
Yes.
But I really can't remember the content. It was too long ago.
Okay. Was there anything in that training that you remember about what would happen when compartmentation within a high-rise block is breached?
I can't remember.
Okay. Can you remember anything about whether you learnt anything in that programme about the spread of fire on the exterior of a high-rise block?
No, I can't remember.
So you can't remember one way or the other, is that right?
No, it's long time ago.
Okay. And Shepherd's Court, you say you attended.
Yep.
How was that at the same time as Mike Dowden and the rest of Red Watch?
I believe it was, yeah. I was on the same machine as Mike Dowden.
Right. Do you remember who attended from Red Watch, in addition to you and Mr. Dowden?
The only people I remember were me, my governor, Mike Dowden, and Charlie Batterby was there.
Yes.
He was riding a different machine and got there a bit later.
Right.
I can't remember anybody else from that fire.
And do you remember at what stage in the progress of the Shepherd's Court fire you arrived?
I believe it was when it was made pumps 8, so we were a bit of a later attendance, and the fire was in full swing when we arrived.
What did you see when you arrived?
I saw a multi-compartment fire that spread up the building.
Could you see what was on fire on the outside of the building?
It looked to me just like the windows, the area around the windows was on fire.
Right. Okay. And in your career at North Kensington, have you attended calls to fires in high-rise buildings before?
Yes.
When and where? Can you help?
The one that I can remember would be Trellick Tower, which was around a month and a half, 2 months before Grenfell Tower. And that was a fire in one compartment.
A fire in one compartment, yes. And in very short terms, what were the lessons that you learned as a firefighter from attending the fire at Trellick Towers?
Not really any lessons, but one thing that happened there was the wet rising main was defective and wouldn't work, so that delayed us in making entry to that compartment.
Yes. How often prior to June 2017 did you receive training in relation to fighting fires in high-rise residential properties?
We have a regular training that's in our diary. I believe the last time before Grenfell was actually just a few weeks before. Having just been at Trellick Tower, we were looking at high-rise a little bit more. So that was a pre-made fire brigade training package that would have been delivered by Watch Manager Dowden.
And can you remember what the focus, or the takeaway, if you like, from that particular training programme was just a few weeks before Grenfell Tower?
I believe it was just a general refresher in the basics of high-rise firefighting, sort of what to do on arrival, sectorisation of the building. Stuff we would already know from previously at training school, but just to refresh in memory.
Right. Anything about how to deal with a fire on the exterior of a building?
No.
Anything about what would happen if compartmentation was breached?
No.
Anything about what you might do if you had to consider partial or total evacuation of a high-rise building?
No.
In your witness statement at page 1, in paragraph 2, you say at the end of the first line, the last realistic firefighter training I've had for a high-rise block of flat was in the summer of 2016. The course was called Back to Basics and comprised of a case study lecture on the Lacknell House high-rise fire. The course also had a practical element to it, where we carried out a drill relating to a high-rise fire. We used Hammersmith's Tower to do this. Could you just tell me a little bit about the case study? First of all, do you remember what were its basic elements?
I need to mention that the case study, I think, since doing the statement, I might have confused what I just mentioned to you about the Lacknell House case study I did in 2014 with the content of this Back to Basics session. I don't believe it was about Lacknell House.
Oh, I see. Okay, so everything you told me just now about your 2014 applies to the questions on the case study. I see, okay. And let me just press you a little bit, though. The practical side of it, you say you did a drill relating to a high-rise fire and you used Hammersmith's Tower to do this. Could you just describe for us what you did in practical terms when carrying out the drill relating to a high-rise fire using Hammersmith's Tower?
Well, again, that was a long time ago. My memory's not great of that day. I just remember that I was a pump operator in that drill, so my job was just to augment the water supply.
Right.
And I can't remember what anybody else would have done at that drill in their different job roles. It was a long time ago.
Okay. You also describe in your statement, in the, I suppose, second part of the second main paragraph, you say in the first sentence, in addition to this, I would have completed the breathing apparatus refreshers course. This is a breathing apparatus refresher that we have to pass annually. And you say it's a 2-day assessment comprising of theoretical and practical elements. Could you clarify whether the refresher training takes place over 2 days every 2 years?
It's every 2 years, yeah.
Every 2 years?
I said annually there, but it's every 2 years.
And is there a 1-day course in the intervening year?
Yeah, there's another 1-day course which covers a little bit less, but we do that once a year, I believe, yeah.
Right, I see. So you do 2 years, 1 year, sorry, 2 days, 1 year, 1 day the next.
Yeah.
2 years, 2 days, 1 day, etc.
Yeah.
I see. And what are the basic elements of what you learn in those courses?
Again, it's refresher training, so it's stuff you basically already know, but it's just getting you back to grips with it. On the 2-day course, I believe the first day is comprised of just more classroom-based theory sessions. You might do a case study of a certain fire, and the second day will be comprised of drills, where you go into a firebox and learn how to deal with the heat, and then another one where you do a drill in putting out that fire, pretending it's a real job.
Can I just explore something with you? Did you get any training at any time, or any sort of intelligence or education of any kind about what should happen when your whistle goes to warn you that your air is getting low? Well, and you're in a high-rise building.
Ideally, you want to be out before your whistle blows. You have a pre-alarm which starts going off when you have, I think, less than 90 bar pressure in your set, which is a warning that you need to get out. But we're trained to get out before all that happens.
Right. So are you trained as to what to do when you're in a building, say halfway up a building, carrying out firefighting or a rescue, and your whistle goes? What are you trained to do at that point?
Well, theoretically, you need to get out of that building if your whistle goes, because you need to get out.
Okay. Are you given any training as to what choices you might have as opposed to just getting out at that point?
No.
Can I just turn then to the next topic, which is your own personal professional experience of high-rise fires? What frontline experience do you have of fighting actual fires in actual high-rise buildings?
I've not fought fire in a high-rise building until the night at Grenfell Tower. Yeah.
Okay. So when you say in the second last line of the second paragraph on page 1, I've never fought fire, do you mean that Grenfell Tower was actually your first high-rise actual fire you attended?
I've attended high-rise fires, but I wasn't in a BA crew that went into the building and extinguished the fire.
Thank you. Right. If you look at the bottom of page 1 and over to the top of page 2 of your statement, you refer there to the stay-put policy, and you say the stay-put policy is a policy the LFB use when fighting fire in high-rise buildings. Unless the fire is in your flat, you should stay within your flat and wait for the fire brigade to attend and to put it out. And then it goes on, I'll just read it all to you. The advice would be to stay put and wait until the fire brigade can make an assessment, whereupon they will instruct you on what to do next. This relies on compartmentalisation working. High-rise buildings are designed so that the fire is isolated to the one affected flat. Now, I've read that all to you because I've got 1 or 2 questions just about that to unpack it. First of all, can you tell us where you get that overall knowledge about stay put from?
Well, that was my general understanding from over the years of being in the job. It's not actually, I believe, an LFB policy. It's a buildings policy that we will adhere to if we're there.
Yes, and is the understanding that you've reflected there in your statement something that you were trained to understand, or is it an understanding that comes from experience or
I think in my case it's come from experience, but I don't recall having a training package specifically designed about the staple policy.
Right. When you say experience, what kind of experience are you drawing on when you explain your stay put understanding?
Well, it's a known fact that you see that when you go into high-rise buildings in our ground, you see the tablets on the walls that say this building operates a stay put policy. So that's where you see it.
I see. Okay. So is it right? You're describing here generally what you see by way of standing policies that building owners apply to buildings that you go into.
Yeah.
Is that your? I mean, I just need you to clarify that.
Yeah, it's not an LFB policy. It'd be something that's to do with building and people who aren't us.
Okay. And your understanding, sorry, just to press this a little, are you telling us that your understanding is of stay put is that is the policy generally that building owners apply on a sort of standing basis to the buildings that you visited as a firefighter?
At high rise, yeah, that'd be my experience.
At high rise, right. You say in the first sentence of that paragraph, the stay put policy is a policy the LFB use when fighting fire in a high-rise building. What do you mean there by the LFB use?
Again, that's probably not fully correct. So I'll say we work with it, but it's not an LFB policy.
When you say you were with it, what do you mean?
Well, if you know the building's got a stay put policy, then that would be the advice to residents to stay where they are.
So you go with the policy the building owner has put on the building?
Yeah.
Right. And did you receive any training as to, well, let me just put the question a slightly different way. If you look at the top of page 2, in the second line, you say this relies on compartmentalisation working. Did you receive any training as to what you, as a firefighter, should do if you or your incident commander thought that compartmentalisation wasn't working?
The training we have for compartmentalisation failing will be to use a covering jet and spray that above that compartment to prevent it from spreading to any flats above or to the side. That's not always possible depending on the height of the fire, though.
Right. So covering jet, that would be on the exterior of the building? On
the exterior, yeah.
What training, if any, did you receive in what you would do in relation to a stay put policy if compartmentalisation failed from the inside?
I don't recall any training for that.
Right. And in the context of your statement, this relies on compartmentalisation working, this is in the context of stay put, did you receive any training as to what to do with the stay put policy if you or your incident commander perceived that compartmentation was not holding?
No.
So were you trained as to what alternatives there would be as to stay put? What alternatives to stay put you would use in the event that compartmentation failed?
No.
Okay. Can I turn now to another topic, which is your familiarity with Grenfell Tower? Did you ever attend a familiarisation visit at Grenfell Tower?
I did. The last one I can remember, I actually can't remember the date, but it was during the renovation of the tower. That wasn't a full 7.2D visit, as I recall. It was we'd been informed that the dry rising main was under some form of construction to be extended. We had to go along and see what our plan would be if we were to have a fire in that few-day period that the dry riser was off the run.
Okay. Let's just take this in stages if we can. Can I just get the time of the year, first of all? Do you remember whether that visit was winter time or summertime?
I believe it would probably be sort of summertime, but I'm not 100% sure.
Right. And that was the last one, was it, before the Grenfell Tower fire in June 2017?
In terms of familiarisation, yeah.
Right. Are you drawing a distinction between familiarisation and what I call 7.2D visits?
Well, there's a little difference there because we were called for a specific thing, just to look at that situation with the dry riser. So it wasn't a fully blown 7.2D visit where we'd look at other things.
Right. Okay. I'll come back to this dry riser visit in a moment. Just in terms of what you call full-blown 7.2D visits, did you ever go on a full-blown 7.2D visit to Grenfell Tower in your time at Red Watch at North Kensington?
I can't remember one, no.
Right. Okay, then going to the what I might call the dry rising main visit. That's not too much of a label. Do you remember who gave you instructions to do that visit?
I don't remember who gave us the instruction. I just was informed by my watch manager on the day that we were going to make this visit.
Okay, and do you remember being given specific things as to what to look for?
No, we're just going to literally go in there to see what our plan would be.
Your overall plan, or just to look at the dry rising?
For the dry riser.
I see. Okay. So, can you just run me through what happened when you turned up at Grenfell Tower?
Again, it's a long time ago, but I believe I think we might have met with a contractor on site. I didn't speak to that person. I believe that was Mike Dowden.
Right.
But I think we just thought of a plan of action, which I think involved hauling a 70mm piece of hose to the Grenfell Walk mezzanine level to augment the water supply while this dry riser was being extended.
I see. Okay. And what was the state of the building construction at that time? Do you remember?
I just remember it being a bit of a working site, but sort of boarded off, and it was mid-construction, yeah.
Do you remember whether there was any scaffolding or...
I can't remember whether there was scaffolding.
Did you get a chance to look up at the exterior of the building?
I would have seen it, but I didn't really pay a massive deal of attention to the outside of the building.
Can you remember what you saw when you saw it?
No.
Do you remember seeing any cladding or
no
sandwich panels or anything like that?
No.
Do you remember whether you know, from your own knowledge, whether any of your fellow visitors from Red Watch looked up at the building and noted the presence of cladding or sandwich panels?
I don't know.
Okay. And how long did the visit last?
I can't remember how long it lasted, no.
And it's difficult, and it's 2 years ago, we'll say.
But more,
roughly.
yeah.
Roughly?
Maybe half an hour, but that's just a rough estimate.
Did you get a chance to look at anything else while you were there, other than the dry rising main locations?
I don't remember looking at anything else, no.
Okay. And did you report when you got back to the station as to what you'd found and what you would do in the event of a fire?
Well, that would have been recorded by the officer in charge.
Okay. And did you go inside the tower on that visit?
Briefly, I think, to the lobby area.
Which lobby area?
The what was then, I believe, the ground floor lobby area at the mezzanine Grenfell Walk level. I think that was just to see where we would be plugging in our hose if we had a fire in that few-day period.
I see. And at that stage, when you visited, you refer to the Grenfell lobby mezzanine level. Was that still connected to the walkway opposite the south side of the tower?
Yeah.
So if you wanted to access the tower main entrance, how would you get in at that time?
At that time, you would have gone up the concrete stairs onto Grenfell Walk that are opposite where now is the main entrance on the now ground floor level.
Okay. And when you went to the tower, did you see what the standing general advice to residents of Grenfell Tower was on your visit?
Not that time, no.
No. You say not at that time.
No.
At any other time?
I don't recall, no.
Okay. So is the answer never? Is the
No.
answer right?
Yeah.
So no, never.
I can't remember, to be honest.
Right.
So.
Okay. Now, if you look at the bottom of page 2 of your statement, this is picking it up in your statement where you talk about your visit. You say there, and the top of page 3, you refer to the last time I had been in the tower was whilst it was being refurbished. And then you say, this was for home visits to flats. Here we spoke to residents and we gave them general fire advice. We also made sure that their fire alarms were working. Did you or anybody else, first of all, keep a record of which flats and residents you spoke to give general fire advice to?
No.
Would that be normal?
Well, actually, we wouldn't personally. I think it would have been kept on a central home fire safety visit database.
Right. Okay. Let me just explore the advice. You say you gave them general fire advice. Could you describe that for us? What was that general advice?
Well, what we were doing was what we call home fire safety visits. So you'll speak to each individual resident of a property. You'll talk to them about what they would do in the event of a fire, what their knowledge was about how they would get out, if they practiced their escape plan. You'd also talk about their cooking habits and bedtime routines. So we'd suggest people close doors at bedtime just to, if there were a fire, it would keep them safe in their compartments. Yes, it's a general visit to, and also we install smoke alarms if they need them free of charge.
Right. And you, in your answer just now, you said that you would talk to them about what their knowledge was about how they would get out and practice their escape plan. Can you just enlarge on that? Given Grenfell Tower's layout, what advice did you give, or would you have? Do you think you would have given in that respect?
I imagine I would have told them to stay put, because that's what we would expect the policy to be in all sort of residential high-rise blocks.
Okay, but you say in the answer that you gave us that what their knowledge was as to how they would get out and practice their escape plan. What I want to ask you about is what advice you gave them as to how to get out and their escape plan.
I'm talking in a general term there. That would more apply to a 2-up, 2-down house, not the high-rise. I'm just talking in general terms there about home fire safety visits.
I see. So when we talk about what advice you gave to the Grenfell residents in particular, did it cover advice as to how to get out and what their escape plan might be?
All it would cover is, if the fire is in their compartment, we'd say, close the doors, get yourself and others out, just go downstairs, outside, and make sure you phone 999 to raise the alarm.
Right.
That'd be the extent of what I'd say.
Okay. Did you give them any advice about what they should do if they thought or found out that there was a fire elsewhere in the building and they were beginning to suffer the effects of that, such as smoke or heat?
It would be the same advice. If they felt they were becoming involved in the fire, it would be the same thing to, if you could, get yourself and others out. If you feel that you can't get out, try and find the room with the cleanest air, hopefully by a window, close the door, use bed sheets and whatnot to block off any gaps in the door, and phone 999.
Right. Okay. How many other firefighters at North Kensington Red Watch accompanied you on giving those kinds of visits and advice?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you there, sorry.
Yeah, how many other people at North Kensington Red Watch accompanied you when you gave that kind of advice?
We usually work in twos, in pairs.
Okay. And who else? Who was your buddy?
At Grenfell, I believe that day it was firefighter Dorgu.
Dorgu. And how many trips to give that kind of advice did you make in your time at Red Watch to Grenfell Tower?
To Grenfell Tower. That's the only one I remember.
That's one. And do you remember roughly how many residents you spoke to and gave that kind of advice to?
I think me and Chris Dorgu may have spoken to about 4 different flats of residents.
Okay. How were those flats selected?
There's a list that we were given by the brigade of people who needed to be spoken to be given advice.
And how was that list put together? Do you know?
I'm not 100% sure. I think they would be known as priority people. I don't know the ins and outs of how these people are selected, but I just worked off that list. Okay.
Was anybody on the list who people you spoke to, people who were elderly or children or had, for example, mobility issues?
I can't remember. I don't recall any mobility issues, but I can't remember.
Okay. Do you remember having any difficulty communicating your advice because of any language questions?
No.
So you're sure that the advice you did give them was understood clearly by the residents you spoke to?
Yes.
Okay. Can I turn then to the night of the 14th of June?
Yep.
And at page 2, paragraph 3, you've described the journey, and you mention a call sheet. In the second line, you say, this information is found on a piece of paper called a call sheet. Is that the same as a tip sheet?
That's the same as a tip sheet,
That is the tip sheet, right. And is that piece of paper generated by a system?
Yeah, it's the mobilised system in the station. So we'll receive the call from a system of control, and they'll print it out of a teleprinter in our watch room, and that will be the call sheet.
Okay. And whose responsibility is it on the watch to take the tip sheet out of the machine and then take it to the pump?
That'll be the watchroom attendant is responsible for going and receiving the message and confirming with control it's been received by pressing a button on a screen.
Okay.
And then you'll then find the drivers will also join them in the room to look at where the location is, and if they're not sure, look on the map for reference so you know where you're going.
And do you remember who the watchroom attendant was on the night of Grenfell Tower's fire?
I don't remember who it was, no.
Okay. Was it anybody who then joined G271 and G272 and attended the fire?
Yeah, they will have attended the fire, yeah. They will be one of the members of the crew, yeah.
I see. It's not somebody who stays behind?
No, they will be a member of the crew.
Okay. And this tip sheet, does the whole crew normally look at the tip sheet, or is it just something that's kept by the watch manager or the crew manager?
It will tend to be held onto by the officer in charge, but if they feel they need to give any information out, they can pass it back to the crew behind or give more information about where we're going if it's required.
Okay. In your experience, what normally happens to the call sheet?
The watchroom attendant will rip it off. It's in two parts. So one will go to the pump. That's one of our machines. The other will go to the ladder, the other one of our machines. So you have one per machine.
I see.
Okay. And that'll tend to stick with the officer in charge on a normal basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're saying two parts. Is it like a carbon copy with two bits to it? Or
so a part that stays at station and two parts that rip off together that will go to the two different machines.
Okay, right. And after the incident, what happens to the piece of paper? Is it filed, or is it left in the cab and then swept out with all the other?
I think they would tend to get swept out. If it was a significant sort of job, you could hold on to them, but we do have a log of it on station anyway, on the teleprinter, if it needs to be, that can be printed off again at a later date.
Okay. Now, in your statement, you say in the middle of that same paragraph, I could see that it read fire, flat 16, Grenfell Tower, Lancaster West Estate. And then you see, I could see 4 call signs attached to this call, making it a 4-appliance call. Now, you may not know this, Mr. Abell, but we have information that the original dispatch was for 3 appliances, 2 from North Ken and Kensington 331, and then that was swiftly changed within a minute or two to 4.
I've since learned this year.
Right. So your recollection is... What's your recollection of...
My recollection there would be incorrect because it would have shown the 3 on that call slip at the time.
Okay. So do you know why you said 4 when you made your statement?
That would be the predetermined attendance for the high-rise 4 pumping appliances, so that's why I wrote that.
Oh, I see. So when you say I could see 4 call signs attached to this call, are you, just clarify with me, do you mean that on the tip sheet it showed what the predetermined attendance was, or did it show what actual calls for actual pumps had been made?
It would show what actual pumps had been made at that time,
right.
But there was obviously a mistake that I later learned, so I was slightly wrong there.
All right. Now, you say you were posted as driver. That's in your next sentence. As I was posted as driver, it was my responsibility to get to the scene of the fire as quickly and safely as possible. How does the posting work? At what point do you get posted to be driver, first of all?
At the start of the shift.
Right.
So you'll have a roll call where you learn which position you'll be riding on the fire engine.
Okay, and how is that distributed?
I think it's a randomly generated list.
Okay.
It's where people tend to get rotated around different job roles.
Oh, I see. And who does the distribution?
That'd be the officer in charge can do it, or they can hit a random button which randomises who goes where.
I see. And the watch manager and the crew manager, are they ever posted to be drivers? Do they ever post themselves to be drivers?
No, they'll be sitting on the front next to the driver, but they won't drive.
Okay. So is it a matter of, as it were, pot luck as to whether you're driver or BA wearer or firefighter without BA?
Essentially, yeah. But
Okay.
you're all trained, so...
Right. If you go to page 3, Paragraph 3, jumping ahead in your statement, you explain what happens on the journey that you could hear via our main scheme radio. And then you go on to say in the next sentence or two further on, extra information would be sent to the appliance's mobile data terminal, MDT. I would not have had sight of this as I was driving the vehicle, and it would normally be left to another crew member to read out. First of all, do you remember who read the information on the MDT on the way to Grenfell Tower?
That would be Chris Secret, the officer in charge at the time, sitting next to me.
And just help me. He would be, so I can get an internal picture of the cab on this journey. You were sitting where?
I'll just clarify. I was driving Golf 272, which is the pump.
Driving. And he was sitting presumably
sitting to my
on your left.
Left.
On the near side.
On the front seat, near side, yeah.
And the MDT terminal is where?
It's central, but facing at him, because he will be the one who will read that on the way to a shout if needs be.
And could the other crew members lean forward and see what was on the screen?
It wouldn't be easy, but they could do it on that machine, yeah.
Okay. Are there machines on which you can't?
Well, our new machines now have tablets in the back, but at that time, the only tablet was in the front.
Right. And you didn't get to see it because you were driving, I think you've just said. Yes. You say our MDT would also contain a pre-prepared firefighting plan for Grenfell Tower. You say it would also contain. Do you remember whether it did?
Yeah, that would be on our... It has a database of information about different buildings on the ground that can be called upon.
Right. And from your recollection, I mean, you say you didn't see the contents of the mobile data terminal on the way to the fire. Did you ever get a chance to look at it later than arrival, but during the fire, or...?
No.
Right. So when you say it would also contain a pre-prepared firefighting plan for Grenfell Tower, is that that's not based on what you saw on the night?
That's based on what I know from just generally.
Generally?
Yeah.
Because what you would expect?
It's on there, yeah. That's what I expect.
I see, okay. And would you expect a mobile data terminal to contain information about specific construction risks that the building presented?
There'll be maybe risks about things in the building, for example, hazardous materials. Anything that would be a concern to us from a safety point of view would be on that database that you can look at.
And what about if the building itself presented a hazard because of the way it was constructed or because of the materials that were contained within its construction? Is that something you would expect to be in the mobile data terminal information?
Yeah.
Do you know what information the contents of the mobile data terminal is normally based on?
It's a built-up knowledge from previous visits to the tower that'll be updated into the operational risk database, which is a central database where all this is put together for London Fire Brigade that any crew can access.
Right. And from your knowledge of the night itself, did anybody say to you that the mobile data terminal was showing that the building itself contained materials or had a construction that presented a hazard?
I don't recall that, no.
Just taking one or two other topics, from your knowledge of what you learned about what the information was on the mobile data terminal on that night, did anybody tell you that it contained information about the lifts?
No one told me that, no.
Okay. And smoke vents? Anybody tell you about?
No one told me about that, no.
Okay. In your witness statement at page 3, third paragraph, you say, we arrived for about 1 a.m. or slightly after 1 a.m. I sighted my appliance underneath the concrete mezzanine at the end of Grenfell Road behind pump ladder G271. When you say you sighted it, do you mean, just to be clear, you parked there?
I parked, yeah.
Okay. When you arrived at Grenfell Tower, did you receive any further information?
On the way to the tower,
when you arrived?
When we arrived, no.
Okay, you say on the way. Let's look at that. On the way to Grenfell Tower, in addition to the mobile data terminal information, did you receive any further information?
You'll see in my statement, it says, I overheard the radio saying that there would be multiple calls to the incident.
Yes, well, I was going to come to that, but let's go to that now. What did that mean to you?
If there's multiple calls, that means more than one person has phoned 999 to separately report the fire, or any incident really. So that will say to you that you're definitely looking at a fire here. It's likely not going to be a false alarm or anything like that.
Right. And multiple calls, is that, in your experience, significant? Does it signify anything more serious than
it would suggest that there was a fire presenting itself for multiple people to phone up, yeah.
Right. Does that give you any indication about the seriousness of the fire, the fact that there are multiple calls?
I would say that you'd be assuming that you're going to a serious fire if there are multiple calls.
And when you arrived at Grenfell Tower, after having parked up, did you receive any further information regarding the nature or location of the fire?
No, not to my knowledge, no.
Did you receive any further information about the seriousness of the fire at that point?
The first indication I got of that was I overheard on the radio, I think Michael Dowden said, "We've got a job here." So, yeah.
Right. Now, let's just explore. You say over the radio. When you heard that, where was he standing?
I don't know where he was standing. That was on my personal fireground radio that I heard that.
Right, that was my next question. So that was on your personal radio, which is clipped into your...
Yes, clipped onto my tunic,
your
yeah.
PPE, yes?
PPE, yeah.
Yep. And that was tuned to channel 1?
That was channel 1, the fireground channel.
And where would you have been sitting or standing when you heard that message?
I believe I would have been outside my appliance getting water to work.
Right. Do you remember where Mike Dowden was?
I don't remember where he was when he said that.
Okay. And you then go on in your statement to describe the charging of the dry riser in the next paragraph. And at the bottom of page 3, just pick it up, you say that after that, at the very bottom, I assisted my colleagues with deploying a 45mm, and then over the page, hose to be used as a covering jet. To the east side of the tower in an attempt to prevent the fire spreading from the 4th floor to the floors above. And I'll just go on to read to the end of the paragraph. I could see flames coming out of a window on the 4th floor. At this time, the flames were concentrated to that one flat. The covering jet was aimed above these flames with the intention of stopping the fire reaching the floor above. Now, I've read all that to you because I have a number of questions about that. First of all, how long after you had secured the water supply did the covering jet start up? Do you remember?
That would have been very, very soon after, more or less as soon as I would have charged the dry riser. The next thing would be looking at, do we need a covering jet?
Right.
Yeah.
And did anybody give you orders to apply a covering jet?
I didn't hear an order, but I started to do it myself, and other firefighters were already joining in, so there may have been an order there, yeah.
Why did you start to do it yourself?
It's just what you do at a job. If you see there's a bit of fire coming out the window, I know we need a covering jet as early as possible, so I'll just naturally start doing that.
Okay. Would it be normal to act without a specific instruction? In other words, working on the basis of your own judgment and experience rather than from a specific instruction from the incident commander?
If needs be, yeah.
If needs be. What would the needs be?
For example, as I said there, I could see flames come out the window and knew straight away we need a covering jet. If I was to go and ask someone if that was the right thing to do, that could delay me in what I'm doing. Okay. So we just get to work.
And you say you saw other people. Let's see if I can get your answer. You say there are other firefighters already joining in. Who were they? Do you remember?
I believe it would be firefighter Bills from my fire station, North Kensington. I'm not 100% sure who the other one or two were, but they would have been from Hammersmith or Kensington Fire Station.
Right. And who at that stage, when you joined in, was in control of the covering jet?
I can't remember who actually took over the covering jet to work it. I know at a later time it ended up being firefighters Des Murphy and Charlie Cornelius, but I'm not sure if they were the first people on it.
And at the point when the covering jet started to be applied, what was the fire doing? Do you remember?
All I can see that it was coming out of the window of the 4th floor.
Could you see anything happening to the exterior of the building?
No.
Could you see anything coming off the building?
No.
When the covering jet started, how long was it applied for?
I'm not sure.
Did it start and then stop, or once it started, it carried on?
Again, I'm not sure. I didn't stand around and watch it being used.
Okay. Do you remember any discussion about putting or jetting water at flat 16 in order to prevent external fire spread or travel of fire into the cladding? Do you remember a discussion about that?
No.
Do you remember being involved in any discussion about whether the water should be aimed below or above flat 16?
No.
Do you remember any discussion about whether it was safe to put a jet into flat 16?
I don't remember any discussion, but I know operationally that wouldn't be safe at the time.
Yep. Okay. Now, Mr. Chairman, I'm doing quite well, but I want to show the witness a video, very short video, just to see if it can help further recollection.
Yes.
We've only been going for 45 minutes, but I'm doing well in terms of time. I need to give a trigger warning in relation to that. It's maybe an appropriate moment.
Well, I'm going to ask Mr. Abell, you appear to be quite comfortable in giving evidence. Is that the case?
Yeah, I'm fine, yeah.
I mean, you don't feel the need for any break at the moment?
No, I'm fine to continue.
Yeah, well, normally on a morning when we start at 10 o'clock, we would have one longer break about halfway through, which, let's say, 20 past 11 or thereabouts. So do you think you can keep going until then?
I can keep going, yeah.
Well, Mr. Bennett, I insist we do that.
Yes, I'm very happy to do that.
Unless you have other reasons for wanting a short break.
No, I have no other reasons. No. My only reason for the short break was to enable people to leave the room.
Well, that can certainly be done.
While I give the trigger warning.
Well, would you like to give
I will do that.
clear trigger warning, and then we'll just give people a chance?
Very good. All right. Well, what I'm going to show, and I'm assuming, Mr. Abell, that you're able to look at this without difficulty personally. I mean, and if there's any problem about that, please tell me. But what I'm going to show you is a short clip from the fire spread video that forms part of Professor Bisbee's sequence of fire on the outside of Grenfell Tower. And some people looking at it may find it distressing. And if they do, then I would ask that they take steps not to see it and not to hear the audio that accompanies it, to leave the room now if they feel they need to, or to turn away from the live stream if they feel that the video or audio would be distressing. So perhaps I could just allow 30 seconds to elapse.
Of course. And
also, Mr. Documents Director, if you could cue that up, please. That would be very good. It's Bisbee flame spread video at 01:15:39.
While we give people a chance to leave if they wish to.
36 is probably best.
Mr. Abell, do you understand what we're going to see? We're going to see film of the fire developing up the outside of the building.
Okay.
And you don't have any concerns about watching that or hearing voices on the audio channel?
No.
Very good. All right, thank you.
Mr. Documents Director, if you could go back to the very start of this sequence, rather than that precise time slot. Mr. Abell, what I'm going to do is first of all run this sequence and show it to you as a whole, and then run it again and ask one or two questions about it.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's fine, yeah.
Is that clear? All right. So if we go from the start of the sequence, Paul, that would be great. in that sequence, what we saw was the exterior doing what it was doing, and then we saw a jet slightly later in the sequence. And if we start at 15:36, we can see that the jet isn't applied for a little bit of time, until a little bit of time has elapsed. So let's just run it through again. I want you to note, please, first of all, what the building is doing, and then what the individual firefighters are doing in front of the building, and this is on the east side, and then at what time the covering jet starts to be applied. So if we could just play that again, please. This is 15:36. You can see what the fire is doing and what's coming off the building. Just pause there. Can you identify, to the best of your recollection, Mr. Abell, who the individuals are in the foreground of that still taken from this video?
From the tabard and the white helmet, that would be Watch Manager Dowden and the bottom left. I'm not 100% sure who the two firefighters are there. I can't see there.
Right. Do you remember whether or not one of them might be you?
That wasn't me, no. I didn't operate the covering jet.
Right. Okay. And at this time, where were you, to the best of your recollection?
I would have been on the south side of the building, next to the pump, Golf 271.
I see. Okay. If you just continue with the video, then, please. Just pausing there. At that time, and I know it's very difficult to be precise in terms of time with your own recollection, but did you know or did you see that the fire on the exterior was behaving in this way?
I didn't know it was as bad as that. I think I must have been doing something else around the south side of the building, but I saw that it was getting a little bit worse.
Okay.
But I don't recall seeing things falling off and what we saw in the video there.
Right. And again, I know it's difficult to be precise with timings, but what do you remember you were doing on the south side of the tower at that time?
I can't remember. I might have been rigging in my full PPE. I think as a driver, you tend to get off the truck and put your tunic on and start getting things to work straight away.
I see.
And then when you get a little bit of a respite, you would then go and put your leggings and helmet on. I might have been doing that, which would have kept me occupied for that little bit of time.
Okay. Just pause there and just take that last answer and let's just examine it a bit. How long does it normally take you as an experienced firefighter to get into a PPE kit?
Well, I'll have to go and get it from the machine. It'll probably be 30 seconds or maybe a minute.
Okay, right. Can you just describe for everybody what you have to do to get into a PPE kit?
Okay, as a driver at a job, I would find my PPE on the offside locker of the truck, open it. I'll have to take my shoes off, get my boots off the truck, take my tunic off, because there's a sort of shoulder straps that go on the leggings. I'll put my feet into my boots, pull my leggings up, shoulder straps on, tune it back on, zipped up, Velcro, then helmet on the head.
Would you say that that is something that takes a little bit of practice?
Not necessarily practice, but I suppose you get quicker at it over time.
Yeah. Okay. Going back to the video, can we just run this through? I want you to watch what the building is doing and then the application of water. So there it goes up. The first time we've got it there at about 15:53 or so. And my question is really, having shown you that, is it looks as if the building was already on fire on the exterior and flaming bits were falling off it before that jet was first applied. That's what it looks like. Is that right, to the best of your recollection?
Well, what I said is my recollection, but obviously it was a long night, and I may be wrong on that.
Okay. Because you say in your statement, I could see flames coming out of a window on the 4th floor, and this is back to the first paragraph on page 4. At this time, the flames were concentrated to that one flat. The covering jet was aimed above these flames with the intention of stopping the fire reaching the floor above. And it looks from this as if, in fact, pieces of burning material were falling down before the covering jet was applied. And just to ask that question one more time, is that what you recall, or do you recall something different?
I don't recall seeing the falling debris, but
Okay.
that's just my memory.
Okay. And one more question. You say in the last sentence of this paragraph that the covering jet was aimed above the flames with intention of stopping the fire reaching the floor above. Having seen the video so far, is that what happened, to the best of your recollection?
So far, I couldn't see it going above the flames there, no.
Okay. Can we just move the video on just to the next sequence? Just before we, can we start right at the very start? I'm sorry, at the very, very start, just focus on the right-hand picture. If you go back to the very start, Mr. Documents Director, I just want to ask you about what you can see on the ground. Maybe we can't see it there. We'll start the sequence and we'll pick it up. Now, if you watch the jet going on, now the next sequence. Now, there, is the jet being applied above or below the window, do you think?
That's below the window there.
Right. If you just just move the sequence on just a little bit, so we can see more of the application of the hose. Does it stay below the window, or does it ever go above the window?
That seems to be staying below the window there.
Okay. And does that prompt a recollection in your mind as to whether the hose was actually aimed above the flames, or not?
I just remembered it being above the flames. Maybe that's because what I'd expect, but again, my memory is probably not great that time.
Okay. Well, that's very good. Thank you very much. I think that's all we need to show you from the video. We'll move on to a different topic now, which is entry into Grenfell Tower. Now, on page 4 of your statement, in the second paragraph, you say, once the covering jet had been established, I was instructed by Watch Manager O'Keefe to wear breathing apparatus, BA. And then you say, I was partnered up with firefighter Archer, who also wore breathing apparatus. I was aware very early on that the fire lift was not working. Therefore, we had to rely on the stairwell to go up and down the various floors. This stairwell served as the only fire escape for the building. And I just want to concentrate with you on your sentence, or part sentence, that says, I was aware very early on that the fire lift was not working. You say very early on. How long after you arrived do you think you became aware that the fire lift was not working?
I heard a message on the radio, probably 3 or so, 4 minutes, maybe less than that, after turning up. And that was crew manager Secret saying, I heard him say on the radio, Mike, the fire lift's not working.
Right. And 3 or 4 minutes after turning up, do you remember roughly where you were at that time?
Again, I would be outside the south side of the building. I imagine bowling hoses out, ready for the dry riser.
Right. And where was Watch Manager O'Keefe at that point?
I don't think he was even there at that point. I think Kensington hadn't arrived when I heard that message.
Well, I was going to ask you, how did you receive instructions from Watch Manager O'Keefe, who wasn't on scene at that stage?
I think there's an issue with the chronology here. I've gone back to something there in my statement, obviously.
Right.
To reference why I went up the stairs for my BA wear.
Okay, so we'll come back to that chronological point perhaps in a moment. I'm just about, so that I'm clear, you wouldn't receive normally, would you, instructions from a watch manager who was not yet status 3?
No.
No. Okay. Focusing on the fire lift, you got the message, or you heard the message being relayed from Chris Secret to Mike Dowden.
Yeah.
So it was on Channel 1 and available to all, was it?
Yeah.
I see. So it wasn't a message given to you, it was just a general message
to... I intercepted, I overheard it, yeah.
Okay. So just so that I'm clear, when you're fireground radio is on, as it were, on receive. Can you hear all communications on channel 1?
Yes, if it's on channel 1, that you'll hear everything that's being said.
If it's on channel 1,
yeah.
I see. And would the same apply if you were on another channel?
Yeah.
Okay. And you refer to the words firelift in inverted commas with a capital letter. What do you mean by the expression firelift?
That would be a firefighting lift that we can take control of to assist in our firefighting efforts.
Right. What was your understanding about what kind of lift Grenfell Tower had, so far as firefighting was concerned, on arrival?
I would have known there was a fire lift in there that we could take control of.
How would you know that?
Just, again, it may have been an assumption, but you'd expect this in a residential high-rise of this type.
I was going to ask you, you say it may be an assumption. Can you remember whether it was an assumption or whether you actually had any actual knowledge about what the actual lift could do?
I'll say that's an assumption.
Okay. And an assumption based on your experience, is it?
Yeah, from past experience, yeah.
Right. And in your experience, is there a difference between a firefighting lift and a fire lift or fireman's lift?
It's all the same thing with a slightly different name.
Okay. And when you heard Chris Secret give this message, did he describe it as a fire lift, or what did he say? How did he describe the lift?
Mike, the fire lift isn't working.
Right.
That's what I recall.
Do you remember him using those words?
Yeah.
Okay. And what did you understand wasn't working?
I only heard that.
That does that.
So I would assume they couldn't control the lift themselves.
Okay. And do you remember what thoughts you had about what consequences the fire lift not working might have for the firefighting strategy at Grenfell Tower that night?
Well, I wouldn't have thought much about it at the time as I was doing other things, but just that they'd either have to use it in normal lift mode or we'd have to go up the stairs to set up the bridgehead.
Okay, right. And did that create any concern in your mind for impact on the search and rescue of residents?
The fire was on the 4th floor, so I knew even if it wasn't working at all, we'd still be able to set up a bridgehead without going up too many stairs. It wouldn't delay us too much in that situation.
Okay. I'm going to continue with this line of questioning, but I just want to ask you, just go back a little bit to see if you can clarify something with me about what the pumps were supplying. We looked at the covering jet earlier, and do you remember whether one pump was supplying both the covering jet as well as the dry rising main, or were there two pumps, one supplying the dry rising main and the other supplying the covering jet?
They were both supplied from Gulf 271.
They were both supplied from Gulf 271. Would that be normal?
Yeah, in that situation, yeah, because that's where the water is being taken to from the hydrant, so that's where our water supply is being augmented.
Right. And why wouldn't you use Gulf 272?
Because to use Gulf 272, we'd have to go and find another hydrant to use straight away. Yeah, so that's basically it. It would take a lot of time, and we could just plug straight into Gulf 271 in the third delivery and get a covering jet to work straight away. Okay,
so say that I'm clear in terms of lines of hoses. You've got a hose going from the hydrant to pump 271.
Yep.
And then two lines coming off, or maybe three, off pump 271, two to the dry rising main and one to the covering jet.
Yeah, we have from the hydrant, we'll have two twin 70mm hoses going from the hydrant to the inlet of our pump on the back of the fire engine.
Yes.
That's our water supply.
So that's two. Okay.
Yeah, and we have three deliveries off the back of the pump as well, 70mm deliveries.
I see. So two in, hydrant to pump, three out, two to the dry riser, one to the covering jet.
Yes.
And they all work at the same time.
Yeah.
Now, going forward, you get inside Grenfell Tower and you make your way with firefighter Archer to the bridgehead on the second floor. That's what I think you tell us.
Yep.
And according to our breathing apparatus telemetry data, we have you there at the bridgehead at 01:21:07. And I'll just show you the data we've got, just to clock the time, so you know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
If you are shown, please, the telemetry data spreadsheet, which is in Bundle of Documents, tab 1. It's LFB quadruple 03115. We can see it'll have to be enlarged. We can see that the fourth pair down is in purple, and you, Mr. Abell, are there as the second of the Archer-Abell pair, if I can call you that. You see that? Yeah. With your station North Kensington next to you on the left, Wayne Archer's Hammersmith on the left above you, and then if you go to the green column, tally out, we have you tallying out at 01:21:16 and Wayne Archer at 01:21:07. Now, when you tally out, when you tallied out, did you go under air at that point?
When you take the tally out, we'd be under air at that point. Yeah.
Okay. And then just looking across the page, we can see you have initial pressure of 28208 bar, and then you log on to the ECB at 01:21:29, so just 13 or so seconds later. And what happens when you log on to the ECB?
You remove your tally from you have a little computer unit on your left strap of your BA set with what we call a tally connected to it. You remove the tally from what we call the bodyguard. That's the thing that shows us how much air we've got left and what our time to whistle is. You give that to the entry control officer, who will slip this electronic tally into an entry control board, and that will communicate with your BA set. So people if you go up some floors, the people at the entry control board can see how much air you've got left and how long you've been in there, how long you've got till you should come out. Yep. It communicates with each other.
And did you have a radio inside your BA helmet?
No.
Set?
No.
You didn't? What about Mr. Archer? Did he?
Firefighter Archer had what we call Barry comms.
Barry comms.
Yeah.
We've heard a bit about that already. So one of two has the Barry, is that right?
Yeah, should have one per BA team.
One per BA team. And you had still had your main fireground radio?
Yeah.
Still on channel 1?
Mine was still on channel 1, yeah.
Right. And could you use it if you needed it?
If I needed it, I could put it on channel 6 and use it, yeah.
Right. Was there any reason why you would have to put it on channel 6?
Sorry, I explained. Channel 1 will be the fireground channel,
yes,
as we've already talked about. Channel 6 is the BA channel. So the people on that will be the BA crews in the building, and the entry control point, they'll be on channel 6. So you've got less traffic.
I see.
So you can hear each other.
And the Barry would be channel 6 too, would it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in your statement, you say that, and this is the third paragraph down, near the middle of the page on page 4, Firefighter Archer and I made our way to the bridgehead. And you say, here we met with Firefighter Dorgu, who had already been upstairs. He told us to follow him. Do you recall any discussion or conversation with Firefighter Dorgu about what he had found upstairs at that point?
From what I remember, we got to the entry control point, and like I say, he'd been upstairs. He seemed to be the authority in what was going on. He knew what was going on. He said, follow me to this floor. There's a fire in a flat that you need to put out.
Okay. And did he say where he was going?
I believe he would have said the floor he was going to. I actually misremembered this in two different statements as being the 5th and 6th floor. I now know it's the 5th floor.
5th?
Yeah.
So just to be clear, what did he tell you about where you were going?
Yeah, I think he said there was a fire in this flat that we needed to tackle.
On which floor?
The 5th floor.
On the 5th floor, right. And did he tell you what you were to do?
Well, he just told us where to go, and we would know what to do then. We just make entry and try our best to put it out.
Right. Did he give you a flat number?
He didn't give me a flat number, but he pointed to the flat that it was when we got up there.
When you got there, he pointed?
Yeah.
And where did he point? Do you remember?
It was as I went through into the lobby area, it was on the right-hand side in the right-hand corner.
Right. Okay. I'm going to freeze you there, as it were, and then, in your imagination, take you back down to the bridgehead and ask you a number of questions about the conditions there and on the stairs. First of all, when you arrived at the bridgehead and went under air, as we've just discussed together, what were the conditions like at the bridgehead in terms of air?
Clear.
Right. What were the conditions like in terms of people? Was it busy or?
I believe there would have been I can't fully remember, but people who would have been there would be the entry control officer, that would be Alex D. St. Aubin, Watch Manager O'Keefe, and obviously firefighter Dorgu and me and firefighter Archer, I believe, at that time.
Right. So in terms of who was in charge of the bridgehead, you remember that at that time, when you went under air, it was Watch Manager O'Keefe?
Yeah.
Not Crew Manager Secret?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. And at that time, 121 or so, when you went under air, do you remember seeing any residents or occupants coming down the stairs?
As I made my way up the stairs, I believe probably 3 people came down as I was going up.
How soon after leaving the bridgehead did you encounter 3 or so people coming down?
Pretty soon. It would have been around probably the 3rd floor that I saw. So yeah.
Right. And what kind of condition were these occupants leaving the building in?
I didn't really notice what condition they're in. I just were aware that they're coming down, but I was quite focused on what I was trying to do.
Did you notice anything about them?
Not really, no.
Okay. And the condition in the stairs as you went up to the 5th floor, what was that like to start with?
That was clear.
And as you got up towards the 5th floor?
Still clear.
It remained clear, did it?
Yeah.
Right. And then when you opened the door from the stair into the 5th floor lobby, what were the conditions like in the 5th floor lobby when you did that?
I remember it being clear in there.
Right. So we get to the point when firefighter Dorgu points at the flat you're supposed to be going to. Where's firefighter Archer at this moment?
He would have been next to me at this time.
Okay. And where did firefighter Dorgu point? Do you remember? So you're standing at the door, you've come out of the stairs into the 5th floor lobby. Where does he point?
He showed us round and pointed at the front door of the flat in the right-hand corner.
Okay.
As you come out the door.
And what about water? Was there water available to you already on the 5th floor when you got there?
At that point, I believe Crew Manager Stern and firefighter Hipple, they were there on that floor as well, and they were getting the water, they were getting the hose set up basically there. Right.
So my next question is, who was it who set the hose or set a hose into the dry rising outlet?
It would have been Crew Manager Stern and firefighter Hipple.
Right. And was there any hose plugged in on any lower floor, which was then used as a backup hose on the 5th floor?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. So the water you had to fight the fire in the flat on the 5th floor was solely the water on the 5th, coming from the 5th floor dry rising main outlet?
Yeah.
Would that be a normal procedure?
Normally you go from the first team would go from the floor below and plug in and go to the next floor up and then start tackling the fire.
Yes.
Obviously, I wasn't aware of the hoses, but at that point, we would have already plugged in on the 3rd and 4th floor, so that would mean that those two would have to plug in on the 5th floor.
Exactly. Did you have any thoughts at the time about whether that was safe firefighting?
At the time, that didn't cross my mind. I was just happy to get a hose.
Okay. And then you say in the 3rd main paragraph on page 4, just picking it up, you say, I think this flat, this is 5 lines up from the end of the paragraph, I think this flat was situated directly above the flat of the original fire. Prior to forcing entry into this flat, I noticed the door to the neighbouring flat was slightly ajar. See that? The door then opened and I could see a family of 4 within the flat. I would describe them as a young couple, man or woman, in their young in their 30s, a young boy, approximately 2 years old, and an elderly gentleman. They looked Middle Eastern. Did you see what the condition of the air was in their flat through the door, which was ajar?
I don't remember seeing the condition of the air, no, but I believe it was clear.
You believe it was clear? Okay. Do you remember which door it was in relation to the flat that you were going to fight the fire in?
It was to the left of the fire flat.
As you look at it?
As you look at the two doors, it's on the left-hand side.
Right. And you say you advised... well, let's look at the next paragraph. I'm jumping ahead a bit fast. They asked me what they should do, as they were next to a flat where there was a suspected fire. I told them to leave. They exited their flat initially with a pram for the young child. I instructed them to leave it behind and to make their way to the stairwell. I believe firefighters Dorgu and Hippel assisted them down the staircase. First of all, when you say you advised the family to leave, why did you do that?
Well, to be honest, they looked very willing to leave. They wanted to get out, and they were more or less coming out the door. So I thought I'd let them make sure they got out.
Right. Was that, well, let me put it this way, how was that consistent with the standing stay put advice that that was in place in the building?
Well, I suppose I got them out because they were willing to come straight out, and I didn't want to stop them.
Okay. Did anybody instruct you to give them that advice?
No, that was just on the fly. I did that, yeah.
Okay. I should have asked you this question earlier. But at that point in the night, did you have any understanding about what the standing advice to residents was at Grenfell Tower?
It would have been the stay put advice.
But again, did you know that, or were you assuming that from your experience?
That would be my assumption from the type of building, residential high-rise.
Yes. Now, you then go on to say that you and firefighter Dorgu, or rather, firefighter Dorgu and Hippel assisted them down the staircase. How far down did you take them? Do you remember?
I didn't assist them down the staircase. It would be firefighter Dorgu. And I believe he went out the door with them.
I see.
And I didn't see where he went after then.
You don't know how far down he went?
I don't know how far down he went, no.
Did he come back again? Do you remember?
I don't believe he did after that, no.
Right. And so, what happened next in terms of the fire in the flat you had gone to the 5th floor to fight?
Okay, well, firefighter Archer and I went to the door.
Yeah.
Firefighter Archer had what we call a Halligan bar, which is a sort of a prying bar we use for opening doors. He started to break entry into the fire flat.
Okay, Halligan bar you called it?
A Halligan bar, yeah.
Okay, is that different from or the same as an enforcer?
It's different from an enforcer.
How is it different from an enforcer?
An enforcer is essentially a battering ram that you use brute force to smash a door down. A Halligan bar, it's a bit more subtle. You put it in the side of the door and try and crowbar it open, essentially.
Oh, it's like a jemmy?
Yeah, try and basically get the door open like that.
Right. And, okay, who had the Halligan bar with them? Was it you or was it Archer?
Firefighter Archer was using that.
Okay. And what happened next? You got into the flat. What were the conditions like in the flat that you saw?
Well, at first he opened the door and it closed. The door closed on us by accident straight away, so we had to open the door again. I ended up sort of booting the door open because I couldn't get the Halligan bar. I couldn't open it again with a Halligan bar. The visibility was zero. There was thick black smoke coming straight out from the moment we kicked the door open.
Yeah. So you then say at the top of page 5, you describe what you've just told us. You say, I just kicked the door in. Almost immediately, a thick plume of smoke came out of the flat. I could see thick black smoke. This was to floor level and visibility was zero. I was very surprised at this and started to feel concern. Just pause there. What was surprising to you about what you were seeing?
Well, in that situation, I'm going to the floor above the initial fire floor. I'd maybe expect there to be a bit of smoke in there. Maybe the fire from the floor below has gone through the window of the floor above, maybe set the curtains on fire. I'd expect maybe a bit of smoke, but the sort of smoke that came out, the thick black smoke to floor level, would indicate this is a fully involved fire in this flat, which is unusual.
Right. And then in the next sentence you say, at this point, I was only aware of fire on the 4th floor, and fire within a tower block should not spread in this way. However, it was obvious to me that this was a fire compartment due to the smoke and poor visibility. Can you just explain, first of all, what do you mean when you say, however, it was obvious to me that this was a fire compartment due to the smoke and poor visibility?
Yeah, the sheer amount of black smoke is what's normally consistent with a fire, and a bad one.
A fire and a bad one. But when you say this was a fire compartment, do you mean this was a compartmented fire, or do you mean this was a fire in a compartment?
I might have used a bit of brigade lingo there. It's a fire flat. There's a fire in that flat.
Right.
And I wouldn't have necessarily expected there to be a real significant fire in that flat.
I follow. Okay. And then just going back to what you said a little bit earlier in the sentence. At this point, I was only aware of a fire on the 4th floor, and a fire within a tower block should not spread in this way. But you see a fire in this flat. Now, given that you had been instructed to fight a fire in a flat on the 5th floor, and you knew there was a fire in a flat immediately below it on the 4th floor, did you have any thoughts at the time about whether compartmentation had failed within the tower itself?
I thought that, like I say, I thought maybe there'd been smoke that had gone in through the windows of that compartment. Maybe there's a slight bit of fire if the windows were open or something. I wasn't expecting that it would be, like I say, a fully blown fire in there.
But when you got in and you saw the thick smoke, you realised you did have a fire there.
Yeah, so compartmentation, it would have failed at that point, yeah.
Yeah, so you realised that the compartmentation between floors 4 and 5 had failed?
Yeah.
Right. And what did that mean to you? Was that significant?
That was significant to me because my job then is to try and nip this fire in the bud and put the fire out in this compartment before it spreads to the 6th floor.
Yes. Did you have any thoughts yourself about whether it would be appropriate to evacuate people?
No.
Did you contact or try to contact Mike Dowden to tell him what you'd seen in the flat on the 5th floor?
No.
Do you know why that is?
I was in BA mode, essentially, so I believe it would have been Firefighter Archer would be communicating with the bridgehead, saying that sort of information.
Okay, you say would be. Do you know whether he did?
I can't recall whether he did or not.
Right. Would you, if you were communicating, expect to communicate with the bridgehead or with the incident commander direct?
The bridgehead.
Okay. Would there be an...
Six.
Okay. Having seen compartmentation fail between the 4th and the 5th floors, would you not... would it be normal not to communicate with Mike Dowden direct, but nevertheless still to go via the bridgehead?
You still go through the bridgehead, yeah, through the BA communications channel.
Okay. In your experience, once you're in a tower, in breathing apparatus, would it be normal only to communicate with the bridgehead and not directly with the incident commander on the ground?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to continue in this vein for a little bit of time. I note the time, which is somewhere stranded between 20 past and 25 past. I don't know whether the witness would like a break. I'm happy to continue till half past.
I'd inferred from what I've seen that we were now going to go into the flat with the witness. Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Well, that might be a sensible point to have a break.
Yeah.
Mr. Abell, we're going to have a break now, about 15 minutes. Can I ask you, please, over the break, not to talk about your evidence or anything else relating to the inquiry?
Of course, yep.
Okay, thank you very much. You go with the usher. She'll look after you. And we'll stop now and we'll resume at 20 to 12, please. Okay. All right, Mr. Abell?
Yes, yeah.
Ready to keep going?
I am, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abell. Yes, just a couple of questions standing back for a moment from what you were doing in flat 26. First of all, if you were firefighting internally, you, Tom Abell, were firefighting internally, who was the pump operator on G272?
271 would be the pump operator for that.
271,
Yeah.
sorry, my mistake.
That would be
271.
firefighter Bills, I think.
Bills. Okay. And what was 272 being used for?
I don't know what that was being used for at that time.
Okay. If you were carrying out internal firefighting on 2 levels at that time, so level 4 and level 5 within Grenfell Tower, would that have any impact on the water supplies available for exterior firefighting?
It would have a slight impact, but for internal firefighting, you're rarely walking in there with the hose in the on position, squirting water the whole time. You'll be using it in short bursts, so the pressure will usually be around the same for firefighting outside in that circumstance.
Right. And what about the higher up the building you go in order to fight fires internally? Would that be the same?
Naturally, the higher up we go, it'll be slightly less, on the 23rd floor, for example, than the 5th floor, just by gravity.
Yeah. Okay. Do you remember at any point speaking to the tenant of flat 26 or anybody who'd come down the stairs to tell you that there was a fire in the flat there?
No.
You don't. Do you remember whether any of your colleagues spoke to anyone from flat 26?
Since the fire, I believe either Christopher Dorgu or Justin O'Byrne had talked to them, and that's how they knew there was some form of fire in that flat.
Okay. But your knowledge on the night itself, you say, I think, no.
On the night, I didn't know.
No. Okay. Now, can we go back to your statement, please? Page 5. In the second paragraph, you describe what happens after you entered the flat. You were operating the branch, and firefighter Archer was behind you, managing the hose and using the thermal imaging camera. You then go on at the end of that paragraph to say, it was hard to identify any source of fire, and all the firefighting techniques I deployed were not having any effect on the fire. Do you remember whether you communicated what you were finding about firefighting techniques to anybody at the bridgehead?
Not with the bridgehead, no.
What about to Mike Dowden on the fireground?
No.
No. Is there a reason why you didn't radio down to the bridgehead and say, all the firefighting techniques I'm using aren't working?
I didn't have comms at that point. I didn't have a direct line of communication with the bridgehead. My BA partner had the Barry comms set.
You had a radio, though?
I had a radio, but that was on channel 1 for the fireground, and I couldn't hear anything on the radio at that time.
Okay. Do you know whether your firefighting buddy, as it were, Archer, shared your view that all the firefighting techniques that you were deploying weren't working?
I'm not sure.
Do you know whether he made a communication with the bridgehead to that effect?
I don't know.
When you say all the firefighting techniques I deployed were not having any effect on the fire, did that surprise you in any way?
Well, like I say, I couldn't find where the fire was, and to paint a picture, it was like having your eyes closed. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Also, the thermal imaging camera, you had to put it right next to your visor and press it against your visor to be able to see any sort of light from it. It was that thick.
Right.
Also, on your visor, there would be all sorts of carbon build-up. When you try and wipe that off with your gloves, the carbon's on there too, so you're just smearing it around. It was very difficult to identify where a fire was on the thermal imaging camera. Okay.
And what was the heat like inside the compartment?
At first, it was warm at first.
Right. And you go on in the next paragraph to explain what you did. In the next paragraph, you say, at some point I was aware that the hose appeared to have snagged on something. Firefighter Archer left to try to find the affected hose part to detangle. He gave me the TIC. I used it to try and identify seats of fire. just focusing on that evidence for the moment, where did he leave you? Do you remember?
He left me. We'd gone into the compartment. We'd gone past, I believe, what I felt like was a bathroom, a little toilet room, a cupboard, and I think we were at the end of that sort of hallway. I remember feeling a chair, like a one-piece sort of a suite chair, and throw it out of the way. So that would hint that might be in sort of a living room area.
Right.
But that's all I can tell you.
And did firefighter Archer leave you alone in the flat?
Yes.
Did you have water?
Yes.
You did. So the tangle wasn't causing a blockage to the water supply, was it?
No.
Okay. But you were alone in the fire compartment with a snagged hose and no buddy?
Yeah.
And no Barry radio?
No.
Is that safe?
It's not safe at all, no.
Were you concerned?
At first I wasn't concerned because I thought he'd be coming straight back having got some more hose. But he didn't return, and I was there for some time on my own.
He didn't return at all?
No.
Do you know why that is?
I believe the snag was much further back than he expected out in the lobby area. I believe he got sort of overcome by the conditions in the lobby, got a bit lost and couldn't find his way back into me.
You say believe. Is that belief based on something you saw at the time on the night? Or?
I saw nothing at the time.
Right. Okay. How long did you stay in flat 26 on your own with a snagged hose and no buddy and no radio communication?
A number of minutes. I couldn't put an exact amount of time on it.
Right. You then go on in... Okay, so before I go on, you told us about communications. In the middle of this paragraph, you say, firefighter Archer had not returned. So that's it. And I had no radio communications. I didn't have a Barry radio set built into the breathing apparatus. And my efforts were not having the desired effect on the fire. I made the decision to leave the compartment for my own safety. Did you try to use your fireground radio that was on your PPE to communicate with the bridgehead at that moment?
Well, I believe I did, but in the conditions, you can't see. You've got to change from channel 1 to channel 6, and if you can't see radio, you can't do that really, unless you're very, very lucky. So,
right. Was there a reason why you didn't use channel 1 to communicate what you were what you were finding and the situation you'd found yourself in?
Not at that time, no.
Is there a reason why you didn't do that?
I don't know why I didn't do that, but I didn't do that.
Okay. Just a few lines above that, and I've jumped ahead a little bit just to follow up on communications, but just a bit above that in the paragraph, you say, I also had to periodically regulate the temperature of the room, but in a way that I did not steam myself. After a period of doing this, I could feel the temperature had increased, and it now felt very hot. Could you just give us an impression of how hot it was?
Well, I'm talking about regulating the temperature of the room. This means to put what we call a safety pulse above your head, where you spray a pulse of water into the gas above you, and it will cool the room down. I felt the need to do that, I think, probably 2 or 3 times.
Was it working?
It worked for a period, but then obviously the temperature would steadily rise back up again. If you put too much water in, if you keep doing that loads, you'll burn yourself with the steam.
Yeah.
So I had to play a bit of a game of controlling the temperature.
Okay. Did you, at that stage, discover where the fire actually was?
No.
Did you think it was in the compartment, or did you not have a view?
I could hear. At one point I held my breath. So your own BA set can make quite a bit of noise when you breathe in and out. I'd shouted for my BA partner a number of times really loud and had no response. So I held my breath to see if I could hear him or hear his distress unit going off. When I did that, I could actually hear the fire crackling like a bonfire quite loudly sort of in front of me, sort of to my right, in front of me, that sort of area, but I never saw anything on the tick or with my own 2 eyes.
Right. Did that surprise you?
Well, like I say, in the conditions that I just couldn't see the tick, so
right.
It's not a great situation.
Were those kinds of conditions conditions you were used to in your experience, or were they something completely new to you?
I've been in that level of visibility probably once before, but I wasn't on my own without comms.
You then, I think, describe in the same paragraph, just after the reference to the Barry radio, I made the decision to leave the compartment for my own safety. I made my way back to the exit by following the hose. Once I got to the lobby, I could see the visibility had deteriorated. It was almost as bad as in the flat. Did you manage, do you think, to have any effect on the fire in the flat, or
I don't believe it did, no.
No. So you come out into the lobby, and you say they deteriorated. Was there any sign of firefighter Archer there?
When I got into the lobby, it, again, as bad as visibility-wise, was as bad as in the flat.
Right.
At this point, I was basically dragging myself along the floor, trying to drag all the hose back out with me that I'd taken in, and that's not easy. I followed the wall. I could hear some commotion, some shouting, sort of muffled shouting from what I imagine would be the stairway. And I think I made out someone shouting, I can't find my BA partner. So that obviously is going to be referring to me.
Right.
So I essentially followed the voices as a guide to make it back out to the door, to the stairway.
Okay. And what was your air level like at that stage? Do you remember?
At the time, I don't remember. I've seen it since on your records, but I didn't know at the time.
Had your whistle gone off?
No.
Okay. Given the conditions in the lobby that you encountered when you exited the flat, did you alert anybody else on that floor to the presence of fire in the flat? In other words, a flat on the fifth floor?
Could you repeat the question there, sorry?
Yeah. Given the conditions that you encountered in the lobby on coming out into the lobby from that flat on the fifth floor, did you alert anybody in any of the other flats on the fifth floor to the fact that there was a fire? You didn't. Is there a reason why you didn't do that?
To be honest, I was in a bad way with, like I think I mentioned in my statement, my legs felt like jelly. The adrenaline had worn off and I was pretty much shot trying to carry everything out with me. And I was dragging my way out because I thought I might not get out of there.
Okay. You go into the stairwell and you say that on the next page. Before we get there, at the bottom of page 5, you say that firefighter Archer was with a BA crew from Hammersmith. They were getting ready to go in. I tried my best to explain what I had just done. How many of them were there in that group?
As I got to the door, I believe firefighter Archer sort of helped me through the door. I got to my feet. I believe there was the watch manager from Hammersmith, and there was a crew of 3 BA wearers. I didn't know who these BA wearers were at the time, but I now know 2 of them to be crew manager Matt Sefton and firefighter Ben Broderick.
Yes. Okay. And what did you tell them about what you had just done and what you'd found in the flat?
I tried my best to brief them as to where I thought the fire was. Again, I don't know who I was talking to in the BA team, but I put my head as close to his as I could, and I think I said something along the lines of, go through the door, follow the right-hand wall, keep going to the door that's open. The fire is in that flat. But I probably wasn't being too clear at the time because I was pretty out of breath, so that's what I tried to get across.
Okay. And then over the page, you say, in the first paragraph, Page 6, first paragraph. Firefighter Archer and I made our way down the stairs back to the bridgehead entry stroke control. I got my tally back. Could you describe for me the conditions in the stairway on your descent?
I don't remember the conditions. I believe they were reasonably clear, but I can't be certain about that.
Right. What about people coming down?
I didn't see anybody else come down apart from me and Firefighter Archer.
Did you hand your hose to the Hammersmith BA crew?
I believe I sort of dropped it on outside the door as I came out, and they would have picked it up.
Outside the, which door? The stairway?
Sorry,
door?
the doors of the lobby going into the stairway on the 5th floor.
So got it, right, okay. You dropped it there, what, on the inside, lobby side,
it
or
would
the
have been
stairwell
on the
side?
outside, in the staircase side.
Right.
Outside.
And what happened to it? Did somebody pick it up?
I didn't see anyone pick it up. I sort of stumbled towards the BA crew and tried to tell them what I'd seen.
Right. Stumbling, you say?
Sorry?
Stumbling, you say?
Yeah.
Right, okay. And then you went down. How easy did you find it to descend from the 5th floor to the bridgehead?
Well, I was still sort of trying to get my legs back. I think I had my hand on the wall, sort of trying to guide me down. Taking deep breaths, trying to sort of recover.
Right, okay. And did the conditions improve, or did they stay the same on the stairway as you went down?
I don't remember.
Okay. Now, we can take your time of return to the bridgehead as about 1:40 from the BA telemetry data, but we don't need to look at it. Do you remember who was in charge at the bridgehead there? You said O'Keefe was in charge earlier. Was he still in charge?
I believe he was, but I believe in my statement as well. I said I briefed the entry control point, but thinking over the last few days, I actually don't remember briefing the entry control point with what I'd seen.
Well, I was going to ask you, because you say in the next sentence, in the first paragraph on page 6, you debriefed the entry control officer and apprised him of the situation. O'Keefe was the officer in charge of the bridgehead at that time. The entry control officer was who?
That would have been Alex D. St. Aubin.
Okay, and you say you debriefed him. Do you remember what he said? What you said?
I don't remember debriefing him. I think
Okay, so yeah. Do you know how did that get into your statement? Do you know?
I think at the time, but watching all my colleagues speak in the last week, I've been thinking about this a lot every day, and it's brought back some more memories from the night. And when I thought about it, I thought, I don't actually remember saying anything to the entry control point. I'm not sure why I thought that. So that's my honest answer.
No, okay. Do you remember whether you told anybody, whether at the bridgehead or outside on the incident ground externally, what you had encountered on the 5th floor?
No.
Right. You don't remember, or you remember you didn't?
I didn't personally go around telling anyone what I'd seen on the 5th floor.
Okay. Is there a reason why you didn't?
I think I was just keen to get out and get my gear off. So.
And what about Firefighter Archer? Do you know from your own knowledge whether he communicated what he had found on the 5th floor to anybody at the bridgehead or on the incident ground?
He might have talked to the entry control point, but I'm not 100% sure.
Right. And once you were out of the tower, what was your next task?
I went to a garage area underneath the concrete mezzanine for Grenfell Walk. I took my breathing apparatus set off, and I did what we call a fireground A test, which means you take your cylinder off, put a fresh cylinder on, and that was with a view to maybe going back in the building again if I needed to.
Right. Is it quite common to do more than one wear at an incident?
No, not really. It happens very rarely, and usually you'd have a real good break in between if that were the case.
Did anybody instruct you to go and do an A test?
An A test? No, I just did it. It's just a good practice.
Right. Were other firefighters, to your knowledge, also doing fireground A tests with a view to going back up into the tower?
Just after I started mine,
yes,
I was joined by crew manager Batterby, who had been in BA Crew 1, and he sat opposite me doing his BA set at the same time.
Did you have a conversation with him?
A brief conversation. I think I must have said, that was bad, wasn't it? Nothing more than that, really. Just he looked like he'd had a bit of a bad wear himself, but we didn't really have a big conversation.
Right. Did you discuss together what you were going to do next?
No.
Okay. On page 6 of your statement, if you look at paragraphs 2 and 3 in there, you start by saying, I would approximate that the time is now about 1:45 a.m. That tallies, you should know, with your BA data. And then you go on to say that you went to the garage area and came out. And you were asked by Watch Manager Collins and other firefighters to set up and supply water to 2 ground monitors. The purpose of these ground monitors was to prevent the fire from the east side encroaching onto the south side. And you then explain where they're set up. And you explain in the next paragraph what a ground monitor is. And you then, in the 3rd paragraph, say in the middle, this is the first point at which I realised how much the fire had spread. I was aware of heavy smoke on the 5th floor, but this was the first time I'd really seen the flames and fire to the exterior of the building. I remember thinking, this is going up like rocket fuel. Flames had consumed more than half of one side of the tower. They were ferocious flames. It was completely unprecedented. A fire in a tower block should not spread like this. Fires are normally fought from the inside and not the outside. Now, I've read that all out to you, so we've got it on the screen. I just want to ask you 1 or 2 questions. First of all, you say this was the first point at which you had really seen the flames on the exterior. Where were you standing, do you remember, when you first saw the flames?
I walked up the stairway onto Grenfell Walk, which would be the sort of the first floor mezzanine level. As I got up there, I had a real good view of the east side of the tower, and that's where I saw how bad it had got.
Right. And you say, I remember thinking, this is going up like rocket fuel. Had you ever seen anything like that before?
No.
You say that the flames had consumed more than 1/2 of one side of the tower. When you say 1/2, do you mean, what do you mean?
I think when I did my police interview there, I couldn't remember exactly how far up the building they went. So I just said more than 1/2, meaning from bottom to top.
Right.
But the video would suggest it was actually to the top at this point.
Yes, and I was going to ask you whether you meant bottom to top, whether you went laterally, sideways.
That would be bottom to top.
Right. Do you remember seeing whether it was spreading?
Well, it would be my assumption that it was spreading quite rapidly the way it was going.
Yeah. And in which direction? Do you remember seeing in which direction it was spreading?
I only saw the fire on the east side of the tower at that point, so
right.
Just upwards at that point.
Okay. And the ground monitors were operational. Do you remember having any view about whether they were being effective at fighting the fire on the exterior?
No, I pretty much ran up the stairs with the gear and helped set them up.
Right.
And then I got sort of roped in to do other jobs, so I didn't hang around and wait for them to get turned on. So I couldn't comment on how effective they were being.
Yeah. In the last sentence in the 3rd paragraph on page 6, you say fires are normally fought from the inside and not the outside. First of all, do you mean there in relation to high-rise?
High-rise fires, yeah.
Yeah. And normally fought from the inside and not the outside. That being so, was it usual or unusual to have a covering jet on the outside?
It's usual because you're not fighting a fire with a covering jet. It's a defensive tactic. So it's purely to stop fire spread. You're not. It could actually be dangerous to fight that fire from the outside if a BA crew are in that room, because like I said earlier about the steam, you could, in the worst case scenario, sort of steam your colleagues to death if they were in there. So yeah.
And with this, when you say outside, you're applying that to a covering jet and a ground monitor, or are they the same thing effectively?
They're not the same thing technically, but they were being used for the same reason. To stop fire, it's like a defensive tactic to stop the fire spreading around.
Well, in terms of a ground monitor, just describe for us what it is physically as a piece of equipment. In
layman's terms, it's more like an unmanned or unstaffed water turret that you're way down, and it can throw a large amount of water, much more than a normal firefighting branch, at a target. You usually use these for maybe a warehouse fire If you didn't want to commit people into there for safety reasons, you could fight it from a distance with a very powerful ground monitor.
And assuming, it's maybe a slightly strange expression, but assuming normal water pressure for central London, what sort of height would you be able to get a plume of water up from a ground monitor?
It'd be quite high. I'll be speculating if I don't actually know the official height you could get with it, really. But
okay. Well, let me ask you more specifically. On the night, do you remember how high you managed to get the ground monitor to apply water up at Grenfell Tower? How many floors up? Do you remember?
No. And it's worth adding there as well that they were on the south side of the building to stop it from spreading potentially around to the south side of the building rather than up the east side of the building.
While I'm on water pressure, let me just jump ahead a little bit. I'm going to come back to other parts of your statement in a moment, but let me just walk ahead with you to page 8 in your statement, paragraph 3. You describe there how a large piece of cladding fell onto one of the two dry riser delivery hoses and caused it to rupture. Do you remember roughly when that was during the night?
Maybe about 2 hours after we had turned up, but that's a guess. So much stuff happened that night.
And then you go on to say, 4 lines down, luckily the water supply to the building was still sufficient despite this issue. Was that your view at the time?
That was my assumption. I mean, the water going into the building is under very sort of high pressure, around 10 bar. So although it was spraying quite a bit of water around, I didn't feel that we were losing water and that it would be like massively detrimental to what was going on inside the building.
Okay, so that was your impression, was it?
That's my impression. Yeah.
Did anybody tell you on the night that they were having difficulties with water pressure?
No.
Right. Have you heard since the fire about difficulties with water pressure from anybody else?
Not really, no.
Did you witness the ruptured hose being replaced?
I was one of the people who replaced it later on. It took quite a long time to be able to do this because the amount of debris that was falling down.
Yes, I see.
And it also, to replace it, you'd have to cut the supply of water for a short amount of time completely, which obviously would be very dangerous to those inside. So you've got to look at risk over benefit. And later on, when things had calmed down a little and there was less debris falling, we did a really quick changeover, and that would have been when it was getting light. I don't know the exact time, but it was getting light at that point.
Okay, because I was going to ask you, in that sentence you say, in the last, well, it's the middle of the paragraph before the half paragraph break, we eventually replaced this hose around 2 to 3 hours after the rupture when the amount of falling debris had lessened. The we there includes you personally, does it?
Yeah.
Who else helped you? Do you remember?
Firefighter David Badillo.
Yeah.
Watch manager Dowden.
Yeah.
Firefighter Bills.
Yeah.
And I believe crew manager Secret was there as well at that point.
Oh, right. So it was a North Kent job.
But yeah, by chance, yeah, we all happened to be at the same place then. Yeah.
Okay. And the amount of falling debris, I mean, at the moment when the hose had ruptured, could you just give us an impression of what you could see, hear and feel?
Well, I was under the Grenfell Walk, the mezzanine level, offered quite a good natural protection from what was falling down. We still had a few close shaves, but we were mostly protected. But there were big pieces of materials falling down that were red hot. You know, some the size of a table, a similar size, that a metre squared maybe. There was stuff smashing all over the place, and that was building up essentially a bonfire at the bottom of the tower that we had to control throughout the night with hose reels to protect the exit route for any crews and residents.
Yes. Now, can I ask you to go back in your statement to page 7. The top. Well, I actually probably better start at the foot of page 6, after you've described setting up the ground monitor. And you say, I was aware there was a discussion about hauling up a 9-metre ladder to the mezzanine level to assist with rescue operations. I could see there were many people leaning out of windows on various floors of the tower trying to get our attention. They were doing this by shining lights and waving towels. And then you go on to describe watch manager Collins, crew manager Ash and other firefighters hauled a 9-metre ladder to the mezzanine floor. Where was that ladder, first of all, where was that ladder from? Do you remember?
I believe that was from North Kensington's pump, which would be Golf 272.
I see. And you then say, over the page, we pitched the ladder in an attempt to reach casualties on the southwest side of the tower at a 5th floor window. So this is running, so I'm clear, from the mezzanine level, is that the walkway over the garages?
Yeah.
So it's going across like a bridge, is it, onto the south side of the tower?
The mezzanine level?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that used to be the old entrance to Grenfell Tower pre-refurbishment. So you have the Grenfell Walk and essentially like a little bridge going to the side of the building, which now leads nowhere.
I see.
But used to be the entrance.
Right. So what kind of angle was the ladder at?
The 9-metre ladder.
The 9-metre ladder.
It was... I think we knew it might not be high enough to get to where we wanted to go, so we had to pitch it a very steep pitch to get as much height as we could.
I see.
When I was climbing I wasn't feeling safe at all. You know, I think my feet were more or less hitting the wall at one point.
Right.
I was just climbing up, and when I got about near the top, I just said to watch manager Collins, "This isn't going to work. We're not going to get people down this ladder."
Right. And then you go on page 7, 5 lines down, to say the ladder was simply not long enough. We then decided to replace the 9-metre ladder with a 135 ladder. This ladder is 13.5 metres in height and is quite heavy. Under watch manager Collins' instruction, approximately 7 firefighters and 2 to 3 members of the public hauled this ladder to the mezzanine level. This was achieved by some of us pushing the ladder up from the ground floor, while others pulled from the mezzanine level. Would it be quite unusual to involve members of the public in a rescue operation like that?
Yeah.
And how long did that process take? Fetching the 13.5 metre ladder and then getting it up to the mezzanine level? Do you remember?
A couple of minutes. I'll be surprised if that's ever been done before, to be honest, with a 135 ladder. If you see a fire engine drive down the road with a big ladder down the back of it, that's the ladder we're talking about, hauling aloft.
Right. I didn't realise they were detachable. Presumably they are.
That one is a detachable ladder.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And which pump did it come from? Do you remember?
Golf 271.
That was 271s. Okay. And then you go on in the second paragraph to say, once we'd managed to get this ladder up to the mezzanine level, we pitched the ladder to the 5th floor apartment, where the 2 males were signalling for our attention. And then you go on to describe, in graphic terms, the use of that ladder to perform that rescue. I'll read it into the record. I did this by coaching him onto the ladder. Sorry, I'll start. I performed a rescue of one of the males. I did this by coaching him onto the ladder. Understandably, this took a bit of time, as it was a daunting experience for the male, but slowly he managed to climb on the ladder and descended to the mezzanine level. I would say this male was of Middle Eastern appearance. I only spoke to him to give him instruction on how to descend the ladder. Once I had completed my rescue, I handed this male to the police, who escorted him away. Another firefighter performed the rescue of the second male. This ladder was left in situ. There were no other casualties presenting from that window. First of all, do you remember which direction the flat faced from where you were performing this rescue?
South.
South. And how near to the southwest corner was the flat? Did it abut the southwest corner, or was it in the middle of the south face? It
was reasonably close to the southwest corner, maybe 2 flats across.
When you say 2 flats across, do you mean
from the west face?
Right. Do you mean 2 flats or two window frames?
So it's probably 2 window frames, but it's hard to remember.
Okay. Now, you say that you coached him onto the ladder. Where were you during this time?
I was on the ladder with him, so I went all the way up to the window level, and I told him, okay, if you want to get out of here, you need to get onto this ladder. And essentially, I'm just telling him exactly what to do and putting his mind at ease. So I'm not carrying him down the ladder. He's able to go down himself, so I'm just trying to give him the confidence to get onto the ladder and climb down.
Right. And just trying to picture it in my own mind. Where was the head of the ladder situated in relation to the window he was coming out from?
It was against his window sill, I think a little bit over the top of his window sill.
Okay. And so you were below him on the ladder, were you?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you descended, were you below him and he was above you, or?
There was a bit of crossover, so my head would be about where his feet are, and I'm just making sure he's putting his feet on the rounds properly and just trying to keep him at ease, basically.
Okay. And that process, was that something that you'd been trained to do, or was that on-the-spot improvisation?
That's what we were trained to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Did you see for yourself what the conditions were like inside his flat?
I didn't pay attention to the conditions, just the person.
Did you learn from him what the conditions were like in his flat?
No.
Okay. Do you know who the other firefighter was who performed the rescue of the second male?
It was a firefighter from Ealing, but I can't remember his name. I footed the ladder while he brought the second casualty down.
Okay. How do you remember he was from Ealing?
I recognised him from where I've been on standby before, where you go to do a duty at another station, but I can't remember his name.
Okay. And as far as you remember, what method did that Ealing firefighter use to perform the rescue of the second male?
The same method as me.
Right. And did it go to plan in the same way?
It went more or less the same way, yeah. It was a bit slow, but that's understandable given the scariness of the situation.
Right. If you turn to page 7, or at page 7, in the next paragraph, you say, having performed this rescue, I noticed a male on a very high floor lowering bed sheets, which he had tied together in an attempt to descend to the ground floor. This was on the south side of the tower, around the 16th to 17th floor. I could see that the south side of the tower was on fire, but I cannot remember how close the flames were to this male. Do you remember where the fire was? Could you see?
I can't remember exactly. I think it might have just been creeping round to the south side, but I couldn't be certain about that.
Okay. And do you remember how much of the south side was alight at that point?
No.
What did the fact that he was doing what he was doing tell you about the conditions on the south side of the tower at those levels?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes. Did the fact that you saw a man on a very high floor lowering bed sheets on the south side of the tower tell you anything about the conditions inside the building on the south side at that point?
Well, I could assume he was in some distress in there, but to be honest, I think at the time I thought maybe he's overreacting here. So this is going to be a more dangerous way out of the building than going down the stairs. That was thought across my mind.
Did you report what you had seen up on that high floor with that man to anybody?
I was with Watch Manager Collins, who's one of my officers in charge at the time, so he witnessed that as well, but I didn't report it to anybody else.
Okay. Do you know whether Watch Manager Collins did?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
To be honest, we both didn't want to let this guy out of our sight, and were shouting up at him to not try and rappel down the building.
Right. And you don't remember whether you then made arrangements for him to be rescued from his floor?
I didn't make any arrangements for him to be rescued, no.
Right. Okay. And we know, in fact, that it turned out okay, because as you go on to say in the next part of that paragraph, that you subsequently met this man after the fire.
Yeah, I think it's called Olu Talabi.
Right. Okay. Just a few other questions about communications. G272 was designated as the incident command pump. We have that as a matter of record. Were you aware of that?
No, not on the night, no.
Okay. Have you got experience of an incident command pump being left in a situation whereby its radio would be on the loudspeaker in the hamper, I think you call it, at the back?
It can happen, yeah. But an incident command pump would usually be a little bit further away, and if I were operating on one of those, I'd prefer to be sitting inside the cab where it's a bit more quiet and I can hear the internal radio more clearly. Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember on the night what the position was in relation to the incident command pump's radio? I mean, who was manning it, first of all?
I don't know who was manning the radio from the night. I believe from what I've heard since, it was firefighter Bill's, who I turned up with at the start of the incident.
Right. But do you have any recollection of your own independently as to how it was that messages being sent to the ICP would be heard by anybody on the incident ground?
No.
Okay. And how did radio communication between the incident pump and brigade control occur? How would that work? Do you remember?
I don't remember from the night, no.
Okay. And if the driver of the incident command pumps, Danny Bills in this case, was not there, he was busy, how would brigade control communicate with the fireground?
In the very beginning stages, if he was not by the radio, or any of us weren't by the radio, then they wouldn't be able to get that message through.
Right. Okay. A couple more questions. Are you familiar with the condition of metabolic heat stress?
Yeah.
Could you just explain what it is?
I mean, we covered this at training school. It's where, under certain stress in a fire, your sort of motor skills can be affected, and it can cause you sort of stress and make you do things that you wouldn't normally do, or, yeah.
Right.
I haven't got a very more technical explanation of that, to be honest.
Okay. Looking back on it, do you think you might have been affected by metabolic heat stress at any point on the night?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Did you ever consult anybody about whether you...
No.
No. Oh, okay, right. I have no further questions for you, Firefighter Abell. Thank you very much for coming to give your evidence.
Thank you.
You can help me with one aspect that you touched on earlier. You remember we just talked about breathing apparatus and the A test you do on a fire ground.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know how many BA cylinders a standard pump would carry?
You would have 5 spare cylinders on a pump.
5 spares. And do any of the standard pumps have a facility for recharging?
Yeah, they when the BA set's on the back of the truck, they're always on charge. There's a wire that goes inside, and when they're not being used, they're on charge.
So the pump has a compressor?
Oh, sorry, not a compressor, no. We don't. We have our cylinders delivered to us on station, and we take those full cylinders onto the truck. What I thought you were referring to there was electronic charge to the battery for the...
No, I was thinking of whether any of the pumps had...
We don't recharge cylinders on fire ground, though. No.
So you've got the 5 spares and that's it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very helpful, thank you. Do you want to follow that up at all?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Firefighter Abell, thank you very much for coming to give your evidence to the inquiry. I should say, as I've said to all other firefighters who have come before you, that we're very grateful to you for your assistance today, and thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd like to add my thanks to those of Mr. Millett. I don't suppose it can have been a very agreeable experience, but you've given a lot of evidence and a lot of very helpful evidence, and we're very grateful to you for coming along to do so. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Right, I'd like to follow the usher, and then she'll take you out. Thank you. Well, Mr. Millett.
Now, Mr. Chairman, the next witness is Firefighter Justin O'Byrne from G272 North Kensington. It may be better for him, I think, if we were to break now and to come back at, let's say, 1:45, to resume or to start his evidence at that stage, rather than starting it now and then breaking after 20 minutes.
I can see that. My draft programme suggests that you may be able to complete his evidence this afternoon. Is that still possible?
It's difficult, I think, but it may have to be possible.
Well, I wasn't seeking to confine you, but
No.
you've told me what I need to know, which is we can't have a particularly long lunch hour.
I think that's really what I was trying to communicate.
So if we were to stop now, and we'll give ourselves a slightly long lunch hour and say 1:45. That's not going to tie your hands too much, is it?
It will tie my hands by an extra 15 minutes
Well,
more than it would do if we started at 1:30.
Well, true. I mean, very good mathematics.
It's logical, but yes, no, I'm in your hands.
You know roughly how many questions you've got.
Yes, I would.
If you're telling me you think we ought to start him again at 1:30, I'd like to know that.
I think with this witness we may need more breaks than we had with the last witness, and I would ask you to start at 1:30 if that's not.
Well, I'm sorry, you're not going to get a longer than usual lunch hour. I'd like to resume at 1:30, please.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.